Let's explore entering and editing data in an Excel worksheet in a little bit of detail. Let's first of all start by creating a new blank workbook. We could press the key combination Control N, or we could click this button on the Quick Access toolbar, or we could go File, New, Blank Workbook. I'm going to click this button. Immediately, here is my new workbook. What I'd like to do now is delete sheets 2 and 3. So I'll click on sheet 2, hold the Control key and click on sheet 3. So I've chosen 2 sheets. I'll right click and I'll delete those 2 sheets in one hit. I'd then like to rename the sheet 1 that remains Data, and I'll press Enter. I'd now like to enter some data in columns A, B and C. In column A, I'd like to enter some text. So I'm putting 4 names: Sue, John, Karen and Matt. In column B, I'd like to put some numbers. And there they are there. And in column C, I'd like to put some dates. When it comes to dates, I'm entering them with slashes, and that's an accepted format in Excel. And what I might do using the plus in the bottom right corner is I'll just zoom in a little bit so you can see better. If you ever see these hash signs here, it just means the column's not wide enough. So just double click the vertical line between column letters C and D and you'll make column C wider. But I'll undo and I'll just zoom in a fraction more. Alright. Now when you enter data into a spreadsheet, Excel likes to put data in one of 2 boxes. It either decides what you've just typed as text, in which case it will align to the left, and that's exactly what it's done with these names here. Notice Sue, John, Karen and Matt are aligned to the left of their cells. So it considers those 4 pieces of data to be text. If what you've just typed is not deemed as text, then it's considered a number. And what we have in column B are numbers, and they're aligned to the right of their cells. So numbers automatically go to the right and text automatically goes to the left. Now dates are considered numbers, and I'll prove that shortly. So dates also align to the right of their cells. Text to the left, numbers to the right. Now despite this alignment, we can actually step in and change the alignment. If, for example, I wanted the information in these 4 cells, or the entire column, to be centered, I would go for this button here. There are 3 buttons on the Home tab in the Alignment group, which control alignment. You can send the numbers to the left with this button. You can send them to the center with this button, and you can return them to the right with this button. So by default, numbers will go to the right, but you can step in and change it with any one of those 3 buttons. So I'm going to center those particular numbers. So that's the deal with alignment. Now there are some shortcut keys that might be useful to some users also when entering data into a spreadsheet. The first one is if you want to repeat in a cell what's above, in which case I'll go Control, single quote, or apostrophe, and it repeats Matt in the cell A5. And if I do it again, Control apostrophe and Control apostrophe. So Control apostrophe means repeat what's above. You can grab your mouse and copy and paste and do other things, but sometimes it's quicker just to use the keys if your hands are already on the keyboard and you're already doing a lot of data entry. Another shortcut key that you might find useful is to insert today's date. If I'm sitting, say, in C6 and I press the key combination Control semicolon, I will get today's date. If I wish to have the time, then it's Control Shift semicolon or Control colon, and that will give me the time. And another key sequence that's quite useful is Control asterisk, because that selects the data that you're sitting in. So if you're sitting over here and you press Control asterisk, not a lot's going to happen. But if you're sitting in this area where there is a substantial amount of data and you press Control asterisk, you will select the current region. Another one that might be useful is Control A. Control A does the same as Control asterisk. It selects all the data that you're sitting in. So those are some of the handy keys that you can use. Now let's look at dates. I might just delete that time. We have a series of dates in column C, and I'm just going to enter one more date in C7, and that's the 1st of the 1st, 1900. When it comes to entering dates, first of all, notice how I'm using slashes. Slashes are an acceptable format, so are hyphens, but full stops are not. So there's only a few acceptable formats when entering dates for them to be recognized as dates, and so I would say get in the habit of using a slash. Now the dates that you've entered are formatted at the moment as short dates. And what I mean by that is even though I type 1/1/1900, when I press enter it adds an extra 0, and even if I'd put 00 it would have put 1900. Let me do that again. 1//00 will give me 2000. See how it's giving me 4 digits for the year and 2 digits for the month, and yet I'm only wanting 2 for the year and 1 for the month. The point being, when you enter dates, it tends to format the dates how it wants to. And so it's formatted those dates as a short date. What you can do, for instance, is click on C to select the entire column C. And up here where you see date, and you click this drop down, that's where short date comes from. I could change the format from a short date to a long date. And so now it's showing me those dates as long dates. When I click on the first cell, C1, and look in the formula bar, the dates are still short in behind the scenes, but they've been formatted on the surface as a full date. So the 21st of February 1990 literally was a Wednesday, and the 1st of January 1900 was a Sunday. So it understands the days that go with dates better than we do. I'm going to select the whole of column C again. I need to prove to you now that dates are actually numbers. So I'm going to go back to that drop down and I'm going to change it not to a short date or a long date, but actually to a number. When you change it to a number, the 1st of the 1st, 1900 was day number 1, which means that Excel cannot understand dates prior to the 1st of the 1st, 1900. And each day since the 1st of the 1st, 1900 increments by 1. So when I put the current date in C6, that date is actually 42,759 days since the 1st of 1st, 1900. So if we sort of understand that dates are numbers, we can start to get dates to do what we want. So I'm now going to go back and format it not to a number, but to a short date. So that's the deal with dates. Now sometimes we want to format dates not to a short date, not to a long date, but to something other than those. So again, we select the cells or the column, we go to the drop down and we go into more number formats, and it's here that you've got a variety of date formats. For example, here's one with full stops, and here's the sample using the very first date in my selection. So if I go OK, it formats those dates to have full stops. But they're of varying length. I might decide, for example, that I want 2 digits for the day. So in the case of C3, I want to see 02. I want 2 digits for the month, which it's doing at the moment, which is just great. But I want 4 digits for the year. So in that case, I'll go back into more number formats. And unfortunately, there is no format in this list here that gives me that. So now I'm going to go to custom and create my own format. What we have here is 1 digit for the day, and I need 2, so I'll give it a second D. 2 digits for the month, which I'm happy with, and I'm going to give it 4 Ys for 4 digits for the year. 2 days, 2 months, 4 years, and the sample sort of show me that as well. And when I go OK, I've created my own custom format that gives me those dates all of equal length and in a standard format. Another one might be this. Let's go back and create another custom format by going more number formats, going to custom, and let's completely remove what's in the type box. Now the day, if I put a single D, the sample shows me the day 21 based on the first date of my selection. If I do a second D, not a lot happens to the sample because there's 2 digits in 21 to begin with. But if I give it a third D, it starts to tell me that the 21st of February 1990 was a WED, and a fourth D tells me that the 21st of February 1990 was a Wednesday. Then I'd like a space and another D, so I get the day again, but as a number. So I get Wednesday space 21 and space. Now I'll press M, and the sample shows me 2, which going by my first date means it's given me 1 digit, 1 M, for the month. 2 M's gives me 02, 3 M's gives me Feb, and 4 M's gives me February. The more M's I type, the more I want the month in full. If you want any extra characters like full stop, dashes, commas, things like that, just type them. So I have a comma and a space. And then I'll just keep tapping the Y's until I get the year in full. And even though we did 4 earlier, 3 is actually sufficient. And I'll click OK. And I've formatted those dates to be exactly the way I want them. Type your dates in short, but then go into formats and choose a date format. And if what you want is not listed there, then create your own date format by mixing together D's for days, M's for months, and Y's for years. Now, when it comes to working with data in a sheet, not only do we just type to fill in a cell, but sometimes we want to edit what's in a cell. For example, John might be Jonathan, and I don't want to type John again. Imagine there's a lot of text already typed. You just want to make a modification, or you just want to make a change. There's 3 ways to do it. While I'm sitting on John, I could double click and add a than and enter. So I've just edited what's in there. Or I could click up in the formula bar and edit it there. Or I could press the function key F2, which immediately allows me to edit what's in a cell. So Sue might be Susan. I'll go up to Sue, I'll press F2, I'll backspace SAN, enter. I'll come down to Matt, I'll press F2, I'll type HEW, and I'll press enter. So there are 3 ways to edit what's in a cell. If you don't edit, then you basically overwrite. Whenever you type, you'll lose what's in there and you'll replace it with something else. And if you want to delete, just hit the delete key. If things go wrong, and as you saw me experimenting with there, you can go undo. You actually have 100 levels of undo in Excel, but we looked at earlier the autosave. If the autosave is kicked in, you may not get 100 levels of undo. And certain things we also discovered in earlier videos can't be undone, such as deleting a sheet. You can't undo deleting a sheet. So in theory you get 100 levels of undo, but there are times where you don't get the full 100. If I want to undo, I can click this button here on my quick access toolbar. But notice it also mentions the shortcut key is Control Z. The last letter in the alphabet, all Office products, is undo. So if I undo, 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 you'll see it walk backwards through everything I've done. Right back to when I actually started typing, including the zoom controls, as you can see. And off to another sheet. And then if I redo, it redoes everything I've done. The shortcut key for redo is Control Y. So if I press Control Y, it will redo everything I've done. The last 2 letters of the alphabet, Control Z is undo, Control Y is redo. And the last thing I'd like to mention is sometimes when you type in a cell, when you're entering data, Excel likes to change what you've typed. For example, if I go to D1 and I put 1/2, meaning a fraction, I suddenly get the 1st of Feb. If underneath that I put 1/4, thinking a quarter, I get the 1st of April. And under that, 1/3 meaning a third, I get the 1st of March. And when I look in the formula bar, I can see they're actually dates. Sometimes it's necessary to type an apostrophe or a single quote in front of what you've just typed. And that tells Excel what I'm typing as text. So apostrophe 1/2 will give you a half. Apostrophe 1/4 will give you a quarter, and apostrophe 1/3 will give you a third. The apostrophe doesn't show in the cell. You can turn around also and then right align them. It doesn't show in the cell, but it definitely is there, as you can see in the formula bar. And the apostrophe tells Excel to format it as text. If you know that you're going to be typing a lot of text in a column, like phone numbers that begin with 027, and you don't want it to lose the leading 0, then how about formatting the entire column as text? By formatting the entire column as text, when you type in that column, it will not lose the leading 0, and it will not change it to April or February. So if it's a one-off, put an apostrophe in the front when you type it. If it's going to be a column that contains things that you don't want to convert it to numbers or dates, then change the entire column to text. And if it is fractions, just to be clear about that, there is actually a format. Let me just apply that to column F. There is actually a format called fractions. So if I apply the fraction format to column F, and I was to type 0.5, it would change it to a half, even though in the formula bar it shows 0.5. So the formula bar often reveals the true nature of the data behind what you're seeing. So 1/4 is 0.25, and 1/3 is 0.33333333. Format your column as a fraction or format your column as text, but if it's just a one-off, then just put a single quote in front of it when it goes to change your data and you don't want it to.